This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to episode 67. We're so glad you're joining us today on this New Year's Eve day. Thank you for carving out some time. Whatever you're doing, hanging out with family, driving, having the day off.
Right.
We're so glad that you're joining us for a special show.
Very special show.
We did this last year and thought it was so much fun that the team has put together a montage of some of our favorite moments of 2024. I cannot believe the year is coming to a close.
Yeah. And Michelle, just a quick, just thank you to all of you, our listener, for just making this an amazing year and really to take on this challenge of restoring and reclaiming godly marriages. We appreciate you. We appreciate you listening. It has been an amazing year. We've had some absolutely amazing guests.
Yeah.
And it's been so fun to hear, Michelle, of the impact and hearing some of the stories that have come out of this year.
Yeah.
So again,
transformational.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we just want to say thank you.
Thank you to our team too.
And to our team. Absolutely.
Pastor Chris, Patrick, Adam, just a great team.
Absolutely.
On the Celebrate MarriageCast.
Yeah.
So we're so grateful for you, and we hope that you enjoy this show.
The best of 2024.
Here we go.
So listening skills are a whole other thing, being able to reflect what your spouse is saying. So when you're listening, are you actively listening, or are you just listening to respond? When your partner just says something, try to reflect on it. So it seems like you're saying this and this and this and this. Is that correct? Just verify it. When your spouse feels heard, they're more likely to hear you. And so that becomes contagious as well.
That's so good. When your spouse feels heard, they're more likely to hear you.
Yes. If you feel heard, you feel more encouraged and inspired to hear what your spouse is trying to say. And vice versa. When you don't feel heard, the opposite happens. You yell more, or you become more aggressive, and so on and so forth. So I think that, and then also learning not to interrupt, to take turns, stay on the topic. It's very difficult. Like even in my counseling sessions, people will be like all over the place, and I teach them you need to stay on this topic. We started with this, we're going to finish with this.
Sure.
So we can't be, and I find that happens mostly when a lot of issues are just unresolved. You're not going back to the issues. You're not taking ownership, accountability. You're not apologizing. You're not forgiving quickly. So things get swept under the rug and rolled over. When there's another big blow up, all the issues come up, and it's like you're overwhelmed. You feel defeated, frustrated, and your ability to communicate effectively goes out the window. And then it becomes harder and harder to find that resolve. I think being able to take time, especially when you're hitting a wall and you're arguing and it's really not going anywhere, to reset. Sometimes I give couples like a reset word. Like what is a word that you want to use to just calm down? And if they're people of faith, I'll tell them go to your room for like an hour, 15, or maybe even shorter, like 15 minutes. Try to pray. It's hard when you're upset to do that. Because you feel, you feel like maybe you feel a lot of things. Maybe you feel abandoned, not heard, not understood. And I think that posture of vulnerability with God helps you to develop that posture of humility and vulnerability with your spouse. And so...
Well, it's a big perspective shift, right? Like if we're going to God, who has forgiven us of so much and has, sacrificed so much for us, who are we to hold on to this little bitty, sin against us from our spouse? I think too, when we've gone to prayer, it changes your heart too. So even if you go and you're angry, like I think the day, was it yesterday? I don't know when it was, with our whole lunch being set out thing. We were having dinner that night and I was like, who wants to pray? And Ryan was like, why don't you pray, Michelle? And I was like, okay, this is really hard to go to God and be like, Father God, bless us for this food. Like you just can't do it angry, you like it just changes you, and you realize like, okay, I have to get myself right in front of God, in front of my family, because like or else it's just, it's not authentic, it's not real. So to be, and I appreciate that love that sometimes it's usually if someone's kind of in a crabby mood, usually it's suggested that they, even, with your younger son, if he's kind of in a mood, it's like, you know what, buddy, why don't you pray? If he's upset about what food we're having or whatever. And it just like, it changes your heart when you have to go, or even before bed, we pray together, or if there's some kind of issue, praying with your spouse is an amazing way
essential
to like right that.
Yeah.
That's the default mechanism of men, is when they look around the room and they see other men, they assume they know what they're doing and I should know what I'm doing. But the reality is no one in the room knows what they're doing.
Right. Right.
They just don't. And that's okay, because we're not supposed to. Manhood is a learned skill as well. And you need foundational material. I mean, the most foundational thing about manhood is you need to have a definition of manhood. That's what the men's fraternity curriculum is built on. It's built on a biblical definition of manhood that's transferable, because you can't become what you can't define. And most men today in America, if you went up to them and said, hey, can you give me a compelling definition, just a short definition of what it means to be a man? I would tell you that most men could not define manhood. Not in a way that motivates them, not in a way that they can measure their manhood. And so what they're living in is just a guesswork manhood, where they make it up every day, and it leads to dead ends and problems.
Yeah. That is so true. I think if you were to ask people, I don't know, I don't know what people would say.
Maybe like strong, protector, but those are all, I don't know, kind of vague.
Yeah, I mean,
traits. They'll come up with traits,
Sure.
Things like that. And that's good. But let me just give you a story where my son, when he was in high school, he had gone through a lot of the manhood stuff that we're talking about with me and some other dads. And he was at a Waffle House late at night with his buddies, and they were eating, and as high schoolers do, and somehow a discussion came up about manhood. And one of the guys at the table said, hey, guys, what do you think a man is? And it got quiet, and, they said, yeah, that's a good question. What is a man? And my son was sitting there with these friends, and he says, well, I know what a man is. And they said, well, okay, Garrett, you tell us, what is a man? And my son said, well, a real man is one who rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, and expects God's greater reward in life.
Wow. Wow, yes. That's amazing.
And these guys heard that and they went, where did you get that, Garrett? And he said, well, I got it from my dad. But here's the problem. First of all, most dads aren't giving their sons, they're saying to their sons, be a man. But if their son turned to him and said, well, Dad, what does that mean? The dad couldn't tell him. But when a dad can transfer a specific biblical definition of manhood to their sons, it is unbelievably empowering, because the son now has, at least at the core, a basic roadmap that he can measure himself every day by. Am I accepting responsibility? Am I leading courage? This is what manhood's about. But you can't define you can't become what you can't define.
I did want to touch on something too. So obviously we're talking about different extremes or different workouts, if you will. But with some of the people you guys have had on the concept, I think, and Amy talking about just start, go out with your spouse or your loved one and walk.
Yeah.
And, talked about the conversations that you can have with men. Sometimes men won't open up. You sit face to face with them. It's a little bit harder. But I remember couple times you guys had somebody on. If you're walking next to each other, a man will open up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you just walk with your husband, even just especially with the weather nowadays, it's just doing something as simple as walking. It's still getting out there.
Yeah.
Putting yourself through some walks and, hilly country and then being able to talk with your loved one.
Yeah, I think Ted Cunningham said that. I think Kevin A. Thompson and then Pastor Robert Lewis. I think all three of them said women will just go have coffee. I've had coffee with 3 different people this week. So this is a true thing. Like women are very face to face, but men are more side by side. You're in a deer, what's it called? A deer stand? Deer bind? I don't know.
Deer stand.
Deer thing. Yeah. You're in the little thing together side by side. You drive together side by side. You golf together side by side. I don't go do these things. Right. You do all these things side by side. So you want to get a guy talking, go side by side. Ladies, go on a walk with your husband, go something side by side, go driving together. So yeah, great point, Lucas. Yeah, very good.
Another thing to add to that, though, is I have played soccer for so many years. I think I started at age 4, but nothing filled my cup up more until I got to play with Lucas. I think that is just the coolest thing. He's never played soccer before, but decided to join this year. So just a fun thing to be able to do. You might not know if you like something until you actually try it. Just do it with your spouse.
Yeah. I would second that. I think that playing a sport or doing a sport or activity with your spouse is like really, I don't know. There's just like a chemistry and it's kind of like sexy. Like just to see riding to see you out there, just like doing your thing. Yeah. Like it's really cool and it's so much fun. Like it feels like a soccer date every week to go together. Sometimes our kids will come and cheer us on. Sometimes it's just us, but it's so much fun and it's really been our community, but it does feel like extra fun. I don't think I would enjoy it as much just going on my own. Then it would feel like just my own solo hobby, but to do it together is super fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's something very valuable in that. And, learning something new. Like, we started playing pickleball and we never really knew, but we kind of learned together. And now it's something we do together. But yeah, I mean, learn something new. You never know what you're going to really, if someone was like, hey, you guys should go play pickleball, I was kind of like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, don't write it off.
Right. But then we went and did it and it was like, oh, this was really fun.
So much fun. Do you guys play pickleball? We've taught so many couples. Okay, we'll have to get you out there.
Right. Grant, in the midst of everything, obviously you guys have very busy lives. How do you prioritize each other?
Yeah, man, we figured out early on that we are best when we prioritize, obviously, abiding with Jesus. And I think we just saw the days that we didn't abide and the days that we did abide. And that began to just change the way we viewed our marriage, because I think it's easy, man, especially in ministry, as you guys know, like you can get so wrapped up in the doing for the Lord that you come home to your spouse and you're spent, or even in the corporate world and you're just tired and you're kind of autopilot once you get home. And I was like, man, I'm giving and she's giving to all these people. And it feels like at times we're coming home and just, we don't have anything left for one another. And the Lord was just re-centering everything in me on Grant. Your number one priority, like who you've been entrusted to, is Maddie. It's your spouse. And so I just kind of flipped this mindset of, man, what's it worth to do ministry to other people if my wife doesn't feel pursued by me, loved by me, protected or provided by? And so that's my number one goal is, man, everyone else, that's secondary, but what Maddie, how she feels about me, that's number one. And so we've just taken time to get very, very serious about like our dinners together. And just we, every Sunday night we have these list of questions on, hey, how am I doing as a husband? How am I doing as a wife? And just creating space to hear that. Hey, is there anything I'm doing right now that is not loving to you? Or is there anything that I can do? And it's just created some space to hear each other out. And it's been cool. We don't do it perfectly. Definitely not a perfect couple. But like we know, and y'all know this too, like it's so worth fighting for. And it's a fight because Satan hates marriage and he hates unity. And if this is the mystery Paul talked about, that's going to reveal the gospel, like marriage is the mystery of Jesus and the church, then you better believe Satan's like, how do I tear that apart? Yeah. And so one thing that she actually brought to mind first was, hey, Grant, I want you to pray over us every single night before bed. And that is not as easy as it sounds, because there's nights you go to bed right after a little tiff, and she'll lay there, and then she'll kind of toss her hand on my chest and be like, all right, pray. And I'm like, dear God, thank you for my, but we've seen the power of prayer together. Yeah. And that has been something that we've seen a lot of fruit from.
And it's really hard to stay angry when you're praying together with your spouse to God.
Amen.
Kind of changes your heart. Like, you can't stay angry for long when we're taking it to God in prayer.
Totally.
We've had a couple of those times.
We had experience with that.
In prayer, you should pray.
So good. So good.
Right.
So as couples, how do we get that heart open again so we can repair the relationship on it? Because every couple does it. Actually, we did a survey research project when I was with Gary Smalley. And we sent out research just finding out so we took highly satisfied couples. I mean, they're really fulfilled in their marriage. They feel like they're the top 10%. So we wanted to find out, what is the number one trait that makes them so much better than everyone else? What did they think made their marriage good? So when we got that research back, I mean, I was like, man, I really hope it's sex. Because, man, I am using this to my advantage on it. Or, I thought it would be communication.
Right.
But really, the number one trait that they said why we have an outstanding marriage, a super couple marriage, is their ability to forgive. Ability to seek forgiveness and forgive. I just remember looking at that going, that is not sexy.
Yeah.
That is not something I wanted to hear. But when you really look at it, it's really the gateway of a awesome marriage, because we're going to constantly blow it. Now, I blow it a lot on it. So I've had to learn how to really do it well on that with the repair. But forgiveness, when we have unforgiveness in our heart, so there's a lot of hurts in marriage. Because we talk about communication, we talk about the fun of it. It's only 20 minutes, but when you have day after day after day after day, some big things happen in a relationship that shuts down the heart. And then you have the little things that just over and over and over, they become big things.
Sure.
On that. So how do we get that relationship on track? Now, I was very interested in that.
All right. So Roger, you talked about this idea of your heart, once your heart's closed. And we were chatting about this, and you said that forgiveness really has 4 parts.
Yes.
Maybe share that with our listeners here, so that we can learn, once that heart is closed, how do we reopen it?
Yeah. That's a great question. And this is really a skill that every couple needs to have, because we're going to do that. That's just normal. We can't expect to be perfect all the time. But really, when we talk about forgiveness, is when we're in unforgiveness. When we're bitter, we're angry, we're holding that against them. Really what we're doing to our relationship is we're like putting a noose around our heart, and we're going to be not able to have intimacy. So we want to get back on track so we can have intimacy. And a lot of times, I don't know about you guys, but I really don't ever feel like apologizing.
Right. It's not super enjoyable, right?
Yeah, you get that awkward moment in the kitchen where you're like, why don't you start it first? You're the one, this is your issue. But you know what? We talk about this unforgiveness. We talk about anger. Is how do we do that? Because we talk about super successful couples. They said forgiveness is number one trait for them having a highly satisfying marriage. So here's the first one. It's a command. It doesn't say, hey, when you feel like it, you can forgive. But right away, forgive. I ran into a situation with my brother-in-law. We really got into it, and I really felt like what he did to me was like a betrayal. Like I got stabbed in the back. I was so angry at him. I didn't want to forgive him at all on that. And I really held that. And unfortunately, that anger I harbored it deep into my heart and put me in the hospital.
Wow.
I thought I was having a heart attack.
Wow.
And I learned if you really want to get in the back of the ER quicker, just tell them you're having a heart attack. Boom, you're in.
Very true.
Yes. So I went in and they shot me up with a bunch of stuff. And then the cardiologist came around and said, hey, I'm looking at your heart. Your heart is awesome. He said, I can see you have an anger issue.
Wow.
I was like,
Wow.
whoa.
Wow.
And so that was embarrassing to me because of the work I do. And he didn't know me from Adam.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he said, I highly recommend you talk to a counselor.
Did you tell him I am a counselor? Actually,
I held that back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
I wanted to come up. I'm an oil rig worker or something, something really manly on it. So that was so humiliating to me. So I went into my favorite counselor to talk to, work with. Amazing. He was actually Gary's counselor too. And he was kind of familiar with the story, and I said it, and he said, you need to forgive him. I go, I will. He goes, no, you need to forgive him now.
Yeah.
I go, no, I don't. He goes, if you want to keep going like this, if you want to feel miserable, don't forgive. But if you want to feel better, you want to have a higher quality of life, you forgive, because Christ says it's not an option. And a lot of times I tell couples, hey, I know what he did was awful. I know what she did was very hurtful, but we need to forgive now. Because when we say, I forgive, it puts us on the pathway to start of healing.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even utter out his name. So I got in my truck and silently I said, Lord, I forgive Greg. And that was the beginning of my restoration.
Let's jump in. You got some tips for us.
Yeah, so the first tip is the classic marriage thing, communicate. Right? Shocker there.
That's like the Sunday school answer where you'd always say Jesus,
Jesus,
right? Like,
what's the right answer? Jesus.
Communication.
Jesus. What do you do in your marriage? Communication.
All right.
Communication.
Okay.
But is communicate, right? So is with communication, you should never tell somebody, if we're going to be talking about like from the opposite sex perspective, right? So if you're with the opposite sex, you should never be telling them something that you haven't already told your spouse, right?
Yeah.
So there's this communication of you better make sure you're communicating with your spouse, because that starts to affair proof. You're like, man, I can't tell this person that, but I'm going to go over here and tell her that. Oh, that's a bad setup. That starts to go down the wrong road.
Are you talking about people? Okay, question right off the cuff here. Are you talking about people of the opposite sex?
Yes.
Specifically, right? So you could have an accountability person of the same sex and maybe just say like, hey, here's some things I'm wrestling with. But the emotional vulnerability that opens up, if I were to go to, a male that I, worked with or whatever and shared like an emotional thing or something where I'm opening my heart up, and Ryan, like, first of all, the emotions just, I think that's a really risky area, but you're saying anything.
Yeah.
Like anything really important.
And
like
I would
Ryan
even make
should
it
know.
that we're talking, most of these rules are going to be about opposite sex, but it's actually the same. Listen to what you just said. Well, could I go talk to my girlfriend about a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't talked to Ryan about? Probably shouldn't.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you talk to Ryan, then you can go talk to her and get a different perspective or more of that. But you should never be surprised by who she's talking to and what she's talking about. And especially, obviously, with opposite sex. But yeah, I always want you guys to communicate. So as soon as you're like, I don't know if I can tell him this, then I'm going to tell you as a marriage therapist, go run and tell him. Let's go sort it out and figure that out.
Right.
Who knows how it's going to go or what's going to happen, but let's keep that communication going. And so any relationship that you have outside of your marriage should always be secondary, right? It should be first with us.
What do you see? Let's just unpack that more. What does that put in place then? What actually happens when somebody goes and shares some vulnerability with someone of the opposite sex or the same sex? What happens in those instances? What do you see happening?
Yeah, you start to make connections with that person, right? Intimacy is simply shared feelings, right? You can share that through sex. You can share that through talking. You can share that. But it's when you're sharing those feelings, that's intimacy. It's on different levels. All marriages kind of go like this. We're close, we're far, we're close, we're far. Affairs happen when you're like that, right? And so if you're sharing these feelings with someone else, that just makes it risky, right? Is you're having intimate conversations. And when I say intimate, what I mean by that is you're having feelings that you're sharing with another person. That builds a connection.
We've said here, intimacy, we've said this at our church, intimacy is in to me, you see.
Yes.
So being vulnerable with that, the other
And so
person.
that's risky when you're doing that with other people, because that can get misconstrued. That can cause for messes. That can cause all kinds of problems. And that's where you have to be careful.
Like when I first started running, I was the worst at running because like I didn't know what I was doing.
I didn't know you when you started running.
Yeah, like so like this is talking about mistakes being made along the way. Okay, I'm not a natural runner, so like my whole philosophy was I'm going to run as fast as I can for as far as I can.
Ha, I have a great story to tell the listeners.
Yeah, you got one?
Well, when we did meet, a lot of our dates are running dates, and it was around Halloween time. And we did a 5K, and Ryan wore the Flash costume. The Flash is a superhero.
Yeah.
Is he
super fast?
Marvel?
No, he's DC.
Oh my
DC.
gosh.
Yeah.
Just,
That's
sorry.
okay.
Sorry, we're a big Marvel family, so I just thought maybe it was. Okay, sorry if I offended anyone. The Flash.
Yeah.
He's very fast.
Yeah.
He has like a lightning bolt on his costume.
Yeah.
And you wore this big foam red and yellow suit
Like
with a
the
mask.
whole suit. I had a mask and everything. It was
I think it was Supergirl or some other Superwoman. But so, my other friends were like Batgirl and Superwoman and all these like characters. And we all lined up at the start of the 5K and boom, the race gun goes off. Ryan goes sprinting off, like sprinting. It's like Ryan is running a 100-meter dash, only we're running a 5K.
Yeah.
And he just like sprints ahead of the whole group of people.
Yeah. I mean, I did this as a joke.
And then you laughed and then you stopped and you waited for us. But so maybe that was a summary of your running style.
Yeah. So, I made a lot of mistakes in this because like, obviously when you're running a far distance, that's not the best strategy to have. So, part of it is I made mistakes. There was also the time that I decided to have a big steak dinner before the race. Also, not the best choice to make when you're running.
I remember that. Was that Dallas?
I don't know.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I was in Texas. So I'm like, oh, hey,
Gotta
like,
have a steak.
we got to have a steak. But that wasn't the best idea. So, like, you're going to make some mistakes along the way. Are you quick to forgive? Right? And are you willing to learn and pivot?
Yeah. I love that. Did you learn from that lesson?
Oh, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I'm not going to go into detail other than it was horrible. That's all I have.
Okay. Well, we made it through the race.
Yeah, made it through.
So I think, can you think of examples in our relationship then when we've pivoted?
I think the communication I think has been a big thing where we could have continued down a path of constantly butting heads.
Yeah.
Because our styles are so different.
Yeah.
And that's a spot where we've learned, we made mistakes along the way that had we not pivoted, I think we would continue to argue.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Ryan, in that we made an intentional decision that we were not going to allow that communication style to define our relationship or define our marriage. And you're right. I think that we could have continued to butt heads.
Yeah.
And because you're analytical and I come to you with my feelings, that would just set a cycle in motion. Yeah. And if allowed, what would that have caused? Anger, frustration, eventually drift, and just like animosity, really, which when you have those seeds planting into your relationship and growing and you give it, you give Satan a foothold to get in, you're right. I think that it could have been really dangerous for our marriage.
Yeah.
But we made that decision not to allow that one argument, that one disagreement to become a day, a week, a month, communication style.
Yeah.
So Matt, where do people even begin? Let's say that there's a listener out there, probably many listeners that have already overspent, are in debt, maybe up to their neck, up to their eyeballs, feeling like, I just don't even know where to start. It feels so much right now. What is a good first step for them in their relationship and in their finances?
I would always lean back to the budget, but in a marriage or whatever, it's just outlining your goals as well. Do we want to be paying off on this, or what do we want to be paying on? But just having those conversations, and the communication about it, but the budget will bring those topics up anyway. And you can find those things online, and I would say don't overcomplicate the budget. You've never done one before. Some people go overboard and and they're, Excel spreadsheets and they got 17 tabs on the bottom and it all auto calculates, and the other person's going, I don't even know what you're talking about, there's that, just the first couple months of budgeting, it needs to be really, really simple.
Okay. And you had said, I don't know, maybe this is a spoiler alert for the class, but you said, focus on what you're paying off. You're referring to the debt snowball principle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you want to just speak a little bit about that? Yeah. Is that a good next step for people to kind of start considering?
Yeah. I mean, if you're wanting to get out of debt, the debt snowball is a great tool where you're basically starting at your smallest debt and you're paying that off. You're making minimum payments on everything. We go as far as saying stop your investing, get as much cash as you possibly can, and just start at the smallest debt, work your way at it, making minimum payments on everything, and just attacking the smallest one, working your way up. The smallest debt isn't the most, it might be the least interest rate or whatever, and people are like, well, I should be doing that, but starting with the small debt, you will pay it off, and then you roll to the next one, you pay it off, and you see that momentum and the belief that you can actually get out of debt.
Yeah.
Where if you start at something that's $25,000-$30,000, like a car or whatever, car note, you are going to lose that enthusiasm and the I can do this. But if you're incrementally, taking small bites out of it and moving up the ladder, you'll definitely keep the momentum rolling and have more success.
It feels like a win.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Really is about getting some wins to get momentum going.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's great.
What about how do they start this conversation with their spouse? What if they've just never really talked about it? Do you have a tip for how they even start that conversation in a safe, calm manner?
I think maybe just talking about your dreams and, where do we want to go? Do we, start big picture? Do we want to retire? Do we want a summer home? Do we want a vacation home? Do we want a place in the hills? Whatever, maybe you start with, if you're a younger couple, if you're late 20s, early 30s, I mean, seriously, 20 years is going to be, you're going to be in your 50s.
Like
and
that.
Yeah, exactly. So, having those goals and those dreams kind of outlined, that would be a great place to start, because, honey, we're not going to be able to do any of that.
Yeah.
If we're a rat in a wheel and all we do is run, and we don't get anywhere, and you're 50 years old or whatever, and you don't, you haven't saved for retirement, you don't, so let's just start on what do we want our lives together to be like?
Michelle, are you ready to go?
Oh, yeah, I am.
Yeah, microphones are good, Patrick. Not covering my face. It's the moneymaker right here, Oh, boy. All right. You're ready, Patrick?
Wait, I gotta capture this one thought that I had.
We're capturing thoughts.
I was gonna write two things down.
What? How do I know?
Well, I don't know. I'm just hoping it will come back really quick.
I like that you were looking at me like I should know.
I'm looking in your soul.
I have 2 thoughts. What are they? Go.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be good.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Lord, for putting that back in my head and heart.
Oh, good. Very good.
Oh, this is going to be so good. When you hear it, you're going to be like, whoa, that was the thought.
There it is. We're still capturing thoughts.
I'm writing it.
Yeah. You probably should edit this out. It could be the thought capturing podcast.
All right, I got it. It's such a good thought.
Oh, good.
You're going to put it on t-shirts and...
Oh, t-shirts.
Ready
Right.
to go.
Now you're ready? Your thoughts are all captured?
My thoughts are captured.
All right. Yep. Okay. Patrick, are you still ready? Yep, he's still ready. Michelle, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Thank you. Can we just start over? Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you to you, Michelle. Really appreciate that. Okay, Patrick, cut that sucker right out of there.
Metrodome.
Okay.
Metrodome.
What is that?
Metrodome.
What's Metrodome?
Isn't that the clanking we just heard?
Okay,
You've never heard of that?
No, what is it?
Weren't you in band with the tuba? The baritone?
Michelle, I was in band, but I didn't participate in the
Or
band.
piano? It keeps the beat. It's like a thing.
I was one of those guys that, like, I played, like, we'd have a concert, and I didn't know any of the music because I never practiced it.
Okay, well, it's the thing that, like, sets the beat.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You can speed it up. You can slow it down.
Cool. Okay. You gonna do that throughout?
No, I heard it in my headphones, though.
Yeah, I did too. Okay, sorry about this.
Oh, blooper reel.
Okay, but who doesn't like Friday?
I know. It's
Seriously?
the best.
I guess maybe if you have to work Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe not like nurses.
Right. Oh, yeah, but they work 2 days a week.
You're gonna tick off our nurse audience.
Sorry.
They work
They're great.
long
They work
hours.
hard. They work long
long
hours.
hours though.
Right.
Multiple days, overnights, and they have to bounce back and forth and
Yeah.
shift their schedules. Nurses are
No,
amazing. If
they
this goes in the blooper reel, let it
Yeah,
be known that
maybe
we Celebrate MarriageCast loves nurses.
Yeah, maybe take that one completely out of it. Sorry about that to everybody.
Okay.
Back to what we're doing here.
Some of our guests have been nurses.
I know. Who?
Okay. Amy Gravel.
Oh, okay. Good job, Amy. Crushing it.
Okay, just got to strike all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Strike it
Let's
from
do
the
it.
record. All right. We're good. Thumbs up.
All right. Wow. That was rapid.
Okay. Ah.
The big black bear, the big brown bug.
Yeah. Sorry. Trying to get my head around things. Okay.
Is my makeup okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Yours is too.
Oh, thanks. This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to
Wait, sorry, start over because I was looking at you funny when you were starting. I was waiting for you to laugh at my joke. Okay. We can go now.
We can go now. Now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was so good. What a treat to have all of those clips put together. We hope that you enjoyed that. How good was that, Ryan?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And for you, our listener, thank you again for joining us this year. We cannot wait to see what 2025 has in store. We have resources at Celebrate.church/marriage. You can find us on Instagram at Celebrate MarriageCast. And as always, you can text in a question for us or feedback, comments, whatever you want, 605-951-0110. And because this is our last show of the year, I guess it's time for us to say, Happy New Year!
Nice.
We hope that it's a great start to your 2025. And thank you for listening.